have been killed in Gaza in the last 48 hours is a headline that if you search for it right now on the BBC, on The Guardian, on Al Jazeera, you will not find. But if you go back 48 hours, you will find headlines saying that 14,000 babies are going to die in the next 48 hours. Now, longtime viewers of this channel have seen, I'm sure, the many episodes we've done about how the Palestinian propaganda machine works. In this case, of course, the headlines in, again, the BBC was maybe one of the first to pick this up, is a UN expert says something, the BBC repeats it, and then of course all those who the those in the trenches repeat it in their own words. This was done here truly spectacularly in the sense of we see where we've come from October 17th, the Al Ali hospital alleged bombing that killed 500 people that turned out to be a misfired Palestinian Islamic Jihad rocket that killed a couple dozen. Um, where they had to kind of tone it down, with the propaganda, with the lies a little bit, to headlines about starvation, for example, that we've seen, of course, for decades from Gaza, basically since the disengagement, but several times in the past year and a half, to this again. I think the record holder so far for absolutely absurd claim by the savages that started this war and refused to end it that has been repeated by mainstream media in the West. Welcome to the Daily Objective. I'm Razi Ginsburg. I'm joined by James Valiant. James, we're going to read a statement from the BBC about this, but before that, your initial thoughts on this story. You've seen it, I'm sure, in the past couple of days that this is happening, that within 48 hours, 14,000 babies die, and the fact that none of this even remotely, nobody actually thought that this would happen, and it didn't, does not bother anybody and will not change anything in terms of how this is reported, and in terms of how politicians react to these reports, because that's what we've been talking about in the last couple of days. Britain, France, Canada, and others officially throwing Israel under the bus to the extent that Hamas is issuing a statement thanking them. We'll talk about that on the reality show. But yeah, James, that was the longest question I think I've ever asked you. So let's get to your answer.
Well, it's obviously a philosophical issue. Facts don't matter. So in one sense, there's a mental approach issue. These people are cognitively diseased, but the cognitive disease obviously is through a value filter. So they're dishonest. They're lying. They don't care what the facts are at a different level. So what we're looking at as our media outlets whose job it is to tell us the truth, or the UN, whose job it is to, and the sad thing is that this is about child starvation. Nothing could be a grimmer topic, so that we'd have to be, but it deserves ridicule. It deserves laughing at. And so the only correct moral response is, there was this movie called The Manchurian Candidate, a modern one, but I'm talking about the old one with Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury from the early 1960s, called The Manchurian Candidate. And they were making fun of Joe McCarthy and his claims about how many communists were in the U.S. military. And so his number would vary. He'd go
All
from
of
number.
which turned out to be true, pretty much, by the way.
Uh,
Yeah.
Well, McCarthy actually underestimated the number of communists in the U.S. government, but in the movie they were kind of making fun of how the number goes back and forth. Angela Lansbury, the senator says, "Can we just decide on one number?" And the Angela Lansbury's looking at the Heinz tomato ketchup jar, and they pick 57 because that's the number on the Heinz ketchup jar. That is the kind of ridicule that this deserves. I mean, that was a serious topic too. The Cold War, 60 years ago, was a life and death circumstance as well. But they used humor to ridicule it. We need to use humor to ridicule the dishonesty of these media outlets in the United Nations. They're dishonest, they're biased, they hate Israel. They come in with the premise that we have to convince people that Israel is evil. And therefore overstating this, as you say, they won't pause for 30 seconds when you tell them, no, this is all total BS. Obviously, thousands of babies did not die in the last 48 hours, but you've got media people tracking down Senator Cruz from Texas in the halls of Congress, confronting him with it. And it turns
Oh yeah, we're
turns
gonna
out,
show that, by the way. We're gonna
oh,
show that too.
great,
Yeah.
great, because that is total. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about these people's mentality. They walk in, they're value war.
Wait, you're spoiling the beauty of it. Code Pink, by the way, does this all the time. So actually,
Yeah,
do you want to watch it? I was gonna
let's
go to
watch
the
it.
I was gonna
I
go to
think
the
the viewers
BBC
really need to see it.
correction that
Yeah.
they issued, but we can watch this first because it is actually while Daniel finds it and sets it up, I will say this is you say it deserves to be ridiculed, and I agree, but. I was taking a walk before the show, and there were some Jesus people shouting with megaphones in the street corner, and everybody, kind of steps aside a little bit to not walk too close to them. And that's where views like this belong. They don't belong in news reporting that is, again, you are reporting something that you know is fabricated, and then you issue a correction on, page 20 or whatever. But let's see the result of this absolute made up out of the blue concern, how it manifests itself specifically in Congress with Code Pink and Ted Cruz.
Senator, are you aware that the UN just put out a report that 14,000 kids in Gaza will die in the next 48 hours because of the U.S.-backed Israeli blockade on humanitarian aid, on food and medicine?
I really don't understand
You don't-
folks who get completely worked up in
That
support.
14,000 babies are going to die. You get upset that I'm worked up about that?
Yeah, I actually think
Within
murdering innocent civilians and raping women and children is
That's
bad.
what Israel's
Well, you're
doing.
murdering them. You have been voting time and time again for weapons to Israel that have done the exact thing that you're
And I
talking about.
will, going
Murdering-
forward, I'm proud to stand with
you
Israel
will-
against murderous terrorists.
You are proud to stand with Israel in support of murdering Palestinians? Yes or no? Yes or no,
In
you-
World War II, you'd be cheering on the Nazis. And,
Yeah.
and that is,
That's exactly
it is
what you're
amazing
doing.
that you
This
find
is a
murderers and
genocide. This is a
rapists.
genocide. This is a genocide.
First of all, beautiful. I have my issues with Ted Cruz, but yeah, in World War II, you would be supporting the Nazis if today you are supporting the Palestinians. There is no question about it. That was the side of totalitarianism versus freedom. That was the side of murdering all the Jews. It was literally Palestinianism with some internal opposition. That was Nazi Germany. That with internal opposition being the main difference fundamentally between Germany then and Gaza today.
Now, think about the intensity of that woman from Code Pink. She was absolutely certain. There was no wiggle room in her mind. And in her mind, even if let's imagine that Israel was following a correct policy and was cutting off all aid to Gaza and was using starvation, which I would not call murder at all, but an act of self defense. But of course, she's so deep in the weeds here of moral confusion. But it's worse. She's absolutely certain about this 14,000 number. She's angry about it. She calls it murder. She confronts a senator who supports Israel with an absolute lie, with complete certainty, dogmatic clarity about it. She is absolutely convinced that 14,000 babies are going to starve within 48 hours. Now, on the face of it, that's an absurd claim. Then you consider her the level of her moral indignation. And then let's see what would be really the gem would be to talk to her today. They've had to withdraw this. 14,000 babies did not just die in the last couple days. You're wrong. And where did all that moral certainty go? And maybe you need to look in a mirror and reconsider your whole epistemological and moral framework for all of this. It would not matter to her. It does not matter to her. Facts do not matter to her. In fact, she is defending the rape, the mutilation, the killing of babies. That's what she is doing, in effect, because she's defending the perpetrators of October 7th from having the proper consequences for that behavior on October 7th, 2023. So she is the one advocating for baby murderers. And she has the temerity, the gall, to get in front of a senator to track him down in the halls of Congress because he supports Israel. And with this kind of clarity, thrust in his face the idea that 14,000 babies are going to die, and you're a mass murderer if you don't agree with me. The facts wouldn't matter to her. They really wouldn't. It's not only epistemological warping, it's intentional lying. So there's an honesty issue here. These people are liars. They're liars who want to destroy Israel. They are liars who are in defending October 7th. There is no other way one can interpret this. That kind of intense anger, that put on moral certainty that she has, that would not be affected even now or tomorrow or the next day if you confronted her with facts, if you showed her pictures of thousands of healthy Palestinian babies in Gaza. There was this guy on Facebook who was actually promoting one of our videos on Facebook, and he was actually saying everyone's dead in Gaza.
I saw them. I saw that. All of them. Yeah.
There are no
There are
living.
no Arabs. That was, yeah, I saw that.
He literally said that. And, it's a funny thing because I confronted him with this very thing. There are people claiming that there are 14,000 babies who could starve in 48 hours. So even your friends think that there are still some living babies in Gaza. No, you see, they're so detached from reality in their hatred of Israel. They're so unhinged. But guess what? It's that kind of unhinged approach in epistemology is what is informing the leaders of Britain and France and Canada and Norway and Ireland and Spain. This is exactly what is informing this mentality. No, I'm not imputing to them this particular lie, but if this mentality wasn't out there, they wouldn't need to be appeasing voters in their own countries by taking Hamas's side in this. But everyone taking Hamas's side in this needs to take a look at exactly what is going on here with the lies, the outright disgusting propaganda involving the death of babies. There is no more disgusting kind of lie that you can tell. They are the rock bottom of morality. These people are the scum of the earth because they're willing to use lies about the starvation of babies to get their defense of Hamas, the perpetrators of October 7th, who really did kill innocent children and babies that day, who raped innocent women and men that day, who took hostages, including the entire Bibas family. No, these people are so warped, they know, now get this, confronted by the fact like October 7th and the atrocities, it's like they emotionally realize they have to go over the top. They have to beat that. They have to say Israel is doing something far worse when Israel has conducted a war so gingerly and unprecedented in the history of warfare. In fact, way too gently, as we've said many times over the last year and a half plus. So rather than identifying the facts of reality correctly and saying, no, Israel is taking unprecedented steps to protect women and children in Gaza, that is an absolute fact, a demonstrable fact. Military experts of whatever political stripe who actually look at the facts will tell you this. No, they have to make up shit. They have to pull out of the thin blue sky, whatever number, and 14, and you know what's funny? It wasn't just 14,000. The original report had a very specific number that was more specific than 14,000.
Yeah,
These people are willing to make up a detailed fact, which is total BS, which is total nonsense, so that they can perpetrate their lie to get Israel, so that they can support Hamas.
So we'll get to what exactly was said there in a second. Somebody in the chat says these people talking about genocide are either daft or dishonest. Well, they're dishonest. I mean, that's the thing. First of all, certainly Code Pink is dishonest. They know very well what the truth is, and they know what they're doing, and they're doing it again. This is not about facts. Facts are secondary in terms of very, very, unimportant in terms of determining who you support in this war. What matters is people's values, and people's values lead them to side with savages because they attack, civilized people. Look, these people were chanting in London, their equivalents in London were chanting, Yemen, Yemen, make us proud, turn another ship around, when those ships were bringing their own goods, including probably their PLO flags from China. Thank you, Bonnie, for the super chat. Thank you, Jonathan, for the super chat. Thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, James, UN needs to leave the US. I suggest Moscow as the new location. Well, I appreciate the super chat, but I'm going to have to disagree about Moscow. We've already agreed. It's going to be that hotel. The name of it, I forget. The arrow-shaped hotel in in Pyongyang. It's been waiting for
Korea.
30
Yeah.
years for somebody to do something with it. I heard there's electricity in some of the rooms. So yeah, that should be the place. Uh, Thank you, PC, for another super chat. PC says, then Bibas has no family now, thanks to Hamas. Well, thanks to the Palestinian people, it wasn't Hamas that took the Bibas family. It was the other Palestinians who fled into Israel when they heard there was an opportunity. Okay, all right, let's go to this statement by the BBC that, of course, was not as prominent as the original headline. So this is the statement. Speaking to the BBC's Today program, Mr. Fletcher, okay, I think I have part of the statement. Daniel, I don't know if you have the whole thing, but okay, I'll read it as I'll read what I have. Mr. Fletcher said, quote, there are 14,000 babies that will die in the next 48 hours unless we can reach them. When pressed on how he arrived at that figure, he said that there were, quote, strong teams on the ground, unquote, operating in medical centers and schools, but did not provide further details. The BBC later asked for clarification on the figure from the UN's Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, which said we are pointing uh, to the imperative of getting supplies in to save an estimated 14,000 babies suffering from severe acute malnutrition in Gaza, as the IPC partnership has warned about. We need to get the supplies in as soon as possible, ideally within the next 48 hours, unquote. It highlighted a report from the Integrated Food Security Phase classification, which stated 14,100 severe cases of acute malnutrition are expected to occur among children aged 6 to 59 months between April 2025 and March 2026, i.e., we're assuming, guessing, or telling you it might happen so that you promote the kind of different policies that we'd like to see. Back to the thing, the IPC report said this could take place over the course of about a year, not 48 hours. Could take place over. Okay.
Good
Uh,
about a
yeah.
year. And they
And
turned that
there's
into 48 hours and 14,000
wait.
babies.
Okay.
For
There
sure.
was one last paragraph.
Mhm.
When pressed on the figures at a news conference, the UN Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs spokesman Jens Larke said, quote, "For now, let me just say that we know for a fact that there are babies who are in urgent life-saving need of these supplements that need to come in because their mothers are unable to feed themselves." That's it. Now, what's interesting to me, the third paragraph says the BBC later asked for clarification on the figure. Why later? Like, why are you reporting it and then later asking
Right.
where it came from? And there's a reason. Like, we know why.
They don't care. They're lying. They're hoping that if you repeat the lie, it's the Nazi big lie thing. They're hoping that if you repeat a lie, in different forms with different numbers and different ways, all the way back to that hospital that you were talking about, the 500 suddenly, it's funny how that number just whoop, shrank. And then, of course, we found out where it really came from and how it really hit. Suddenly, the whole thing is a lie. They don't care about the truth. They are motivated. They are motivated to warp people's minds. That's what they're out there doing. They're trying to warp minds. And this lady who confronted Senator Cruz, her mind is completely diseased. She is cognitively out of it. If she was given some kind of mental test, you'd think that she should be locked up in a hospital someplace because she's psychotic. She's disconnected from reality. And she's so disconnected from reality, she's getting angry about it. And she's getting angry and she's chasing down a senator and yelling at him and absolute certain about what she's saying. She is a mentally diseased human being. I honestly believe. Now, is it a volitional, self-induced mental disease? Absolutely. These people, when confronted by opposite facts, or when confronted by the atrocities of October 7th, or when confronted by the realities of what Israel has had to endure for over 70 years now, they have to make this up to justify in their own mind their defense of the savages that perpetrated October 7th. That's exactly what's going on here. They have mentally warped their own minds to the point that they get into what would otherwise be described as paranoid psychosis. And so but the thing is, when you have allegedly responsible news agencies or allegedly responsible organizations like the UN trafficking in this matter, they need to be confronted by, okay, what responsible BBC or Guardian coverage would be. How do we allow these liars to get away with it? How do these people get absolutely convinced? What are they doing to public opinion in Great Britain? What are they doing to public opinion, throughout the Western world or the English-speaking media? They would be this soul-searching examination if they were professional journalists at all, if they themselves weren't completely biased. As you pointed out, look at the timing. They report it, and then they get later press them on it. Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Way too late, gentlemen. And now you need to look in the mirror. And now you need to consider just how far gone from reality, just how far detached from reality your hatred of Israel has taken you.
Yeah, and that thing about report it first, check the facts later. By the way, Daniel, I think we'll need a clip for the end of the show, kind of related to that. But I think this is why I think you're being too generous to the BBC, and I'll tell you why after I read another super chat from PC. Thank you, PC. PC says, James, Israel haters are anti-Semites. Absolutely, of course they
Of
are.
course.
And with the BBC, I mean, we see this. Yeah, they just parted ways with somebody who said the quiet part out loud on X, and was about to get
Oh
in
no,
that.
look at the way that the United Kingdom treats Jewish people in Britain versus the way they treat Muslims in Britain. Britain is an anti-Semitic country. I know we're on Ayn Rand Center UK here, but the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland is an anti-Semitic government, particularly with Mr. Starmer in power. But the culture is, I mean, I'm in America. I'm not taking some kind of moral high ground. I've been seeing the rise of ugly anti-Semitism in my country, in my own country. It is disturbing. It is happening all across the West. It is happening in all the media, even look, it's hitting everybody. It's hitting a large number of Jewish people. What's remarkable is you'll find Jewish intellectuals actually promoting this kind of stuff, if not specifically trafficking in this one number, I don't know. But they've trafficked in similar numbers before,
So
and they're
that
Jewish themselves.
Okay. So that's the thing. Here's why I think this, you can't be generous to the BBC here because like, look, what is it that how did this paragraph start? The BBC later asked for clarification on the figure, and of course, it took a while for them to say, well, actually, we kind of take it back, but this is not to quote the UN Secretary General, this didn't happen in a vacuum. Okay, the BBC has been reporting on Israel for decades, for forever, since Israel exists, and before, has been reporting about famine in Gaza for 20 years. Like we did an episode about this where I read the headlines about famine from different years, from 2012, from 2015, from 2020. This is a story that repeats itself all the time, but it also comes within a year and a half long war that the Palestinians started and insist on continuing at any cost to them, and a war in which this has been done so many times. And the BBC, they know who the source here is. The source is exactly the same people who started this war. So you know that Hamas themselves admit about, quietly admit from time to time about lying about the numbers, and you don't report that. You just report their numbers. And of course, Jeremy Bowen, the head of the uh, international news desk in the BBC, said something to the effect of, "What do you expect us to do? Not report anything?" So they explain why they report Hamas's fake numbers, but again, they are taking their news. They just had this documentary that was produced by Hamas that they had to remove. How many apologies is BBC going to be issuing about this war when they know that every such report, people don't look at the corrections. They look at the reports, and the BBC knows this. And the fact that Britain, in terms of anti-Semitic attacks, like being a Jew in Britain today is like being a Jew in early 1930s, let's say Germany. That's what being a Jew here is like at
And
this
that's what they're
moment, and
creating.
this will only increase that. There is bigotry at a level that none of us have ever seen in any Western country. Today against Jews in Britain and other European countries. And the BBC is actively and intentionally promoting that and making it worse.
I think I take your correction. I was far too kind in the way I phrased it to the BBC. The BBC is anti-Semitic. The BBC, just to make it clear, it's not clearly this kind of anti-Israel position is anti-Semitic in general. And you can see in my country, we talk all about multiculturalism and diversity and DEI in my country and all that. But by far, the greatest victims of hate crimes in my country, whether it's personal violence or vandalism of synagogues, are Jewish people. It is the Jews in America who are by far the number one victim. In fact, the numbers in my country even eclipse the numbers of hate crimes against any other race or religion in my country, eclipse them by some considerable number. So this is happening, as you're absolutely correct, and this is happening throughout the Western world. This is reminiscent of Central Europe in the early 1930s. It absolutely is. I mean, what we're seeing now is a conditioning of what the Western mind to hate Jews in a way that not the Nazis were doing in the 1930s on the eve of the Holocaust. There's no other comparison that makes sense. There's no other comparison that is fair. They're ginning up absolute anti-Semitic hatred to the degree of causing violence. I mean, if you were to hear that 14,000 babies are being intentionally starved and Israel didn't do anything about it, you'd think, okay, what monsters? It eclipses anything that happened on October 7th. So they are ginning up a kind of murderous hatred that is responsible for the kind of hate crimes that are happening. Yes, in the English-speaking world, people, in the United Kingdom, in the United States, we are seeing an increase of attacks on Jews. And believe me, even before October 7th, Jews were the number one victims of hate crimes in my country. No, we're seeing the media perpetrating these kind of lies and doing it on purpose. Look at like I say, look at the intensity of that that entity from Code Pink, who was yelling at a United States senator, chasing him down in the hall with her absolute certainty, anger, calling him murder. No, she is inciting violence against Jews. She is inciting. I mean, obviously, she's defending the atrocity. She's defending the atrocities of October 7th. There's no other way of looking at that. But furthermore, she's inciting further violence against Jews and Zionists in the West. There's no other way of looking at it.
We have two super chats that came in at the same time that say kind of two different things, and actually the second says kind of what my response would be to the first. So thank you, Shauna, for the super chat. Shauna says, in America, they don't want to acknowledge that the majority of those hate crimes come from certain demographics because it harms the narrative. And thank you, PC, for the super chat. PC says, Razi, I saw lots of white British going on the Palestine March on Saturday in London. Yes, and that is the point. This is not, everybody, all human beings have free will, and your race does not determine your views. Now, the culture and upbringing in which, that you brought up in very well may influence them heavily, and most people tend to not question fundamentally how they were raised.
Let me take a guess as to the demographics of this entity from Code Pink. She's female. She's white. I bet she was university educated. And so what we're looking at here is not a matter of race or ethnicity, ladies and gentlemen. And as I say, there are even Jews who would happily take the anti-Israel line today. There are plenty of Jews who would be what would really happen if Hamas came to power in the area, and they were in the area? They would eventually be on the target list, but they themselves articulate this. There's no question in my mind. This is ginning up violence and hatred. The BBC is responsible. The BBC is responsible. The UN is responsible. Then they're becoming. We would call this in law co-conspirators or principals to the crime. They're becoming actual agents of the crimes that are happening against Jewish people across the West now. They're actually, in my view, summoning up. People do have free will, obviously, and there is a difference between advocacy and committing the crime. But we're getting to the point now where we're looking at like a Nazi environment in the 1930s. We really are. There's no other comparison that's fair. There's really no other comparison. And there are people who are actively promoting it.
Yeah,
In
and it's
BBC,
comparison.
in
It's
America, yeah.
it's a comparison that is accurate. Now, will it end the same way? Of course, we hope not, but it could. And for it to not end in that way, people need something needs to shift. And right now, we have this, government channel in the UK. Yeah, it's not government the same way Al Jazeera is the Qatari government channel, in that they have all these things that they are supposedly, supposed to adhere to. But in effect, we have a channel that is promoting propaganda for savages that are fighting against the West, and specifically against the Jews. It is unfortunately terrifyingly similar, and yeah, and we'll keep fighting
Hatred of
against it.
civilization. It really is. It's a self-loathing, not on the part of those Jewish intellectuals who take the anti-Israel side, but on the West in general. Well, if in the United Kingdom and the United States you're seeing this happen, it is really a philosophical phenomenon. These people are haters of their own civilization. They're haters of civilization as such. All that makes Great Britain and the United States so wonderful and so civilized today compared to the way things have been in the past. I mean, in the late 13th century, Edward I twice expelled the Jews from Great Britain, from England. Twice. Twice. There was also all kinds of murderous violence as well. But how far have we come? In our minds, we think, okay, in the English speaking world, we've come a long way since the 13th century and Edward the First's, pogroms against the Jews. Have we? Because all that civilization, all of that enlightenment, all of that distance that we've come, they seem to be eroding and attacking. It's an attack on civilization itself that comes from a kind of self-loathing place in places like the United Kingdom and the United States. It is civilization. That's part of what I mean when I say that what we're doing here at the Ayn Rand Center UK is so important. The battle going on in the Middle East today is the battle for civilization. And it's really in the hearts of Western civilization itself where this battle is taking place.
Yeah. South Coast, I don't know if I read this because I have my phone on it for a while, but I will read it again if I don't think I did. Every time Hamas comes at a breaking point, their cheerleaders come with fabricated stories and lies. Yes, absolutely. And you see this in the last few days. I mean, they realized Israel kept saying, Gideon's chariots is an operation where we are going to eliminate Hamas. Now, Israel says that a lot, but the rhetoric around this was different. It did seem like Israel is planning something different, something sort of where they're not going to stop. Although, again, they've started and they keep, begging Hamas for a deal, so they might stop. And yeah, and that's why you see world leaders now, escalating their rhetoric and potentially doing more than that. And you see the media arm of the propaganda machine stepping it up as well. And again, during the ceasefire, would a story like this make it through in the BBC? I don't know, because they probably saved the heavy stuff for now. But absolutely, this was so
The timing
disgusting.
of this, Israel said, you see more action, you see Israel saying they're going to do something. Now, I'm disgusted at the reports I hear about Mr. Trump and the way he's pressuring Israel right now. It is obviously Netanyahu and Israel's responsibility, and you always remind me of that, Razi. But I cannot help but feel disgusted at how Donald Trump is. If this is true, if these reports about the behind-the-scenes pressure that Trump is putting on Israel right now are even half true, Trump has totally betrayed all of the voters who thought he would be better on Middle East policy, who might have voted for him. He is
Yeah.
totally betraying the, hell to pay and blow them to smithereens. That was all just a crock of lies from Mr. Trump, who's
Well,
literally betraying civilization right now and lying. As Trump supporters often like to say, promises made, promises kept. This is a total betrayal of everything he said, that he would be tougher about Middle East policy. Total betrayal, if that's
all right.
true.
I don't like that I started by defending Ted Cruz. I like it even less that I end by defending Trump on a very specific issue, which is the hell to pay. That was not Trump, what hell to pay meant was that there is nothing, basically, this is how I understand it. Nothing Israel can do that Trump will say stop. And
I
uh, and
understand he's
and and
practically
Israel
saying stop.
but Israel did nothing. And that is an embarrassment to Trump, and we know how he takes that kind of stuff from Netanyahu, which he already had issues with in the past.
Well,
So
he let those words escape his mouth, which means he is responsible. If anything,
true.
he should be pressuring them to get tougher then.
Absolutely, but Netanyahu didn't get tougher. I mean, that statement is getting so absolutely. I don't think Trump is okay in what he's doing now, but I think Netanyahu missed such a huge opportunity as he did on October 7th, and again as I think he's doing now. So
Are still hostages out there, people. How can people be defending Hamas when there's still hostages out there? Well, we know we have to deliver aid. We have to make sure Hamas survives. This is absolutely evil. People have so distorted their mental lens on this. And as I say, this is a question of civilization and the survival of Western civilization, as well as the survival of Israel and the well being of the Jews worldwide. Wake up, people. The BBC is lying to you. The UN has been lying to you. They've been lying to you since October 7th.
yeah, by the
This
way, to
is
the person saying in the chat, "Oh, you think it'd be better with Biden?" Seriously, Trump is president. He's going to be president for the next 3.5 years. Can he basically support terrorism and you're okay with it as long as he doesn't support it as much as Biden did? No, no. The U.S.
And
president should be
whether Biden
supporting.
would have been worse or not is not the question. Trump is fully doing something wrong now. I'm going to criticize the dude in power, and I'm not going to compare him to Kamala Harris or Joe Biden as I do it, even if you reasonably can think it would be 10 times worse. No, what he's doing is wrong. It's evil. It's going to kill Israelis. It's going to kill Jews. It's going to create more of this nonsense. It is ginning up, as I say, violent hatred. It is despicable. It is reminiscent of when the Nazis came to power in Europe. This is looking like Central Europe circa 1933, 34. Okay? Wake up, people.
Um, WUB now says, seriously, Trump will do well. Okay, let us know when. If you know now in advance, let us know. We can schedule an episode so people know when we're talking about it. Again, I keep saying, I hope I'm wrong. If you go back to our October 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th shows, this was the thing I said the most. I hope I'm wrong, but I kept saying basically exactly more or less
I
what is
would
going to happen
love
in
to
this
eat
war.
my words. I would love to come here on my knees and apologize. I would love to. Make me a liar, Mr. Trump. Blow Iran to smithereens. Make Hamas have hell to pay. You know something that I would be so happy to apologize for that. I really would.
Yeah. And I would also be happy to apologize for that, but I will still criticize Trump if that happens for everything else he's doing on everything else because he's bad across the board. But more on
Well,
that
let's not bring up other things like due process, habeas corpus, tariffs. There are other issues I have with Mr. Trump. Yeah.
yeah. But yeah, all right. Well, the BBC did what the BBC does, and I believe we have another. If this is not from the BBC, maybe we'll issue our own correction. But Daniel, we have a clip.
Tom, I'm currently 10 miles outside of Beaverton, unable to get inside the town proper. We do not have any reports of fatalities yet, but we believe that the death toll may be in the hundreds of millions. Beaverton has only a population of about 8,000, Tom, so this would be quite devastating. Any word on how the survivors in the town are doing, Mitch? We're not sure what exactly is going on inside the town of Beaverton, Tom, but we're reporting that there's looting, raping, and yes, even acts of cannibalism. My God, you've actually seen people looting, raping, and eating each other. No, we haven't actually seen it, Tom. We're just reporting it.
We're just reporting it. Yeah, and that was Channel 4, not BBC, and fictional Channel 4. But it
Never,
sounds as real as the BBC.
boy, that clip never gets old, does it? The
No,
reply never
and
gets old. is because Western media continues to behave just like that. No, we're reporting it. No, of course, we don't actually have any evidence of it. We haven't seen it. Cannibalism. And then, of course, the numbers are great, too. They only have 8,000 population in the town, but hundreds of millions of people. Well, that would be remarkable, wouldn't it? No, that's exactly the equivalent here, ladies and gentlemen. That is
Yeah.
exactly the equivalent kind of motivated lying to twist minds that we're seeing happening right now.
Yeah, and yeah, Bonnie says funny but inexcusable. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Not
absolutely.
funny and not inexcusable is Keir Starmer's recent, also not so recent, but certainly recent statements on Israel, threats to Israel. That is going to be the topic of the reality show, which is starting late, but in a couple of minutes.
I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
James.
I
Thanks
probably
everybody
caused
for
it to be late.
watching. And yeah, we'll see you in a couple of minutes.
Be safe.